Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining another 2-point webinar. This one's on DeployR. It's a cool one because it's going to help you prevent you make mistakes. Typos and stuff like that can cost you massive time in troubleshooting. So we've already thought of that, and we want to make sure that you don't waste time like that. Your time's valuable. So part of the cool thing about DeployR is it can have these things called advanced step definitions, and we're going to show you today how to use them and hand them off to other teammates and make sure they don't make mistakes. With us today is Gary Block, MVP engineer, Mike Terrell, MVP engineer from 2-point. I think we're ready to go with that, guys.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Yep, thanks, Brian.
Great. Yep. So today we're going to talk about advanced step definitions in DeployR and what they are and what you might do to create your own. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. This is our agenda that we're going to cover today. Hopefully we'll give you some good examples that you can take back and use for yourself. Or we also want to kind of encourage community. So this will work both in regular DeployR Enterprise and DeployR Community Edition as well. So with that, step definitions. What are step definitions? Well, they're the engine behind the steps that you incorporate in your task sequences. So every single step in a task sequence is a step definition. DeployR comes with several in the box or out of the box step definitions already. And with every release, we tend to add a few more. So what you see today might be different than what you see tomorrow. I'll be showing version 1.1, which has, I think, approximately 39 step definitions built in. But we want to make it super extensible so that you can create your own step definitions and even share your step definitions as well. So let's take a look at what they are under the hood. So in the Stifler dashboard, under the DeployR section, you're going to see task sequences, step definitions, content items, and boot images. This is where your step definitions live. So when you go to add a step to task sequence, it's going to actually reference this list here. So we can see that there's 39 total objects in here. These are what you get when you actually install the product, but you can click and add your own step definitions in here. And that's what Gary's going to show later in the presentation. Now, what if we want to take a look at one of these step definitions? So I like formatting disks. It's one that is pretty critical to make sure you get your disk partitions correctly from the onset. So this one's actually pretty simple when you take a look at it. We can see that we've got a disk index that we feed it, we got a script name, and we got a content item. So the content item we'll get into in a second, but you can see that this is just simply a PowerShell script under the covers. And we can get in and take a look at that in a minute. So for example, if you don't like our format step definition, you can create your own step definition based on this one here. So this format.ps1 step script lives in this content item. So the nice thing about seeing this in a browser is I can easily just right click on here, open this up in a new tab, and we'll see the content item that this lives in. Now, to give you some inspiration, we can actually open this content item WIM and export any of the scripts that are in these step definitions. So to locate this, we see that this is in our relative path of content. And I've moved mine over to the E drive here. And if I go into content, what I want to look for is this particular path here. So if I see this path, I'm in here and go into the one, and we can see that this WIM file here. Now, if you've got a handy item like 7-zip, we can go ahead and open this archive up, and we see all these scripts in here. So here's the one that we actually want to look at, format PS1. Simply just extract this. I like putting everything in downloads. Makes it easy to find them. So I'm going to go ahead and extract this. Now, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and close this out. You don't want to leave that open in case you go to do an upgrade or something like that. You don't want to open process on this particular WIM file. Also, don't modify these WIMs directly. Create your own content items. That can cause some trouble. So although we allow you to dip in here and kind of like look and see what's under the covers, yeah, don't modify any of these. Just treat them as read-only, export the scripts, take a look at them, use them for inspiration, that kind of thing. So now that we've got it extracted from the WIM file, I'll just go ahead and open that up. And here's my format PS1 step. And this is what it actually looks like under the hood. Now you can get some inspiration. You can take and use this as a template to create your own step definition and then add it into your own content item. So maybe custom scripts or something like that, to call it. But this will give you a good idea of how it's operating underneath these covers and what you can do to modify your own. I've actually got another one open here, inject drivers. If you're curious on how we actually inject drivers during the process, you can see this scripts right here as well. So with that, it's, you know, free game in terms of getting in and looking at these. All these scripts are signed as well. So when you create your own script, you don't necessarily need to sign, but you can obviously sign your own scripts as well. So with that, that's step definitions under the hood. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Gary to talk about actually creating your own step definitions and why you'd want to create your own step definitions.
All right. Oh, you're done in like record time today, Mike. Give me a lot of time here. All right. So why would you want to create your own step definition? Reusability is one of the main reasons. It allows us to use like the same big chunk of code, but be able to easily do different variations in different task sequences. I kind of like to think of it as a step definition is almost like a PowerShell script, and then you're providing a front end for different parameters that you want to pass. That way, when it's which gets us to the next point of simplicity for your DeployR admins, right? So as an engineer, I enjoy creating new processes and things, but then when I hand that down to someone else who might want to use it slightly different, I don't want them going in and tweaking code just to be able to just to change like how much like a specific number. Like I'll show you an example here in a little bit of some different things, but being able to allow them to be flexible to pass different parameters into a step that makes sense in their situation. This way, anybody can use the same work that you've done, but modify it to fit their needs. So in a simple form, you're basically creating like a front end to a PowerShell script so that they can pass in all the different parameters that they might need. So like think of in even like an MDT config manager and DeployR, when you add a step, like a Windows setting step, and then there's like 8 different options there for like languages, for time zone, on all those things. Those are just basically parameters that are then creating variables on the back end. So what the step definition does is it allows you to pre-populate all the different parameters, and then the script in the back end is going to do all the hard work. This way they never had to see the script or the guts, but they can just go through the little wizard and pick what they need. So that basically like removes a lot of the options for error when you've created the parameters and locked in what they can put in there for the parameters. And then for testing, I really like this because a lot of times in testing, like for Windows updates, that's one of the step definitions built in. I like to uncheck the box for Windows Update, but I still like to have it enable the Microsoft updates for later on. But I just wanted to get the task sequence done, so I can go to testing. I don't want to add the extra 15 minutes it takes to download and apply the updates. So that's just a nice little checkbox in that step definition. And then you can also add different like drop-down items. So it makes it easy for you to pre-populate what are the only options you want passed as parameters versus it just having like a parameter field where they can type in anything and get the syntax wrong. So those are some of the main reasons that we've built it that way. So going then.
And Gary, I would just try to emphasize the reusability aspect, because we do have a very powerful step in there already, which is run PowerShell script, which I probably use the majority of the time. And we allow you to either reference a PowerShell script from a content item, or you can just paste the PowerShell script right into the UI itself. And if you find yourself pasting that same PowerShell script in multiple different task sequences, this is a perfect example of why you'd want to create your own step definition, because then you might get it wrong, or you might copy and paste it and miss a line or this or that. But with creating your own step definition, then it just shows up in the list, and then you can just add it in, and you know every single time it's going to be the same one. So as long as it's not changing, it's a great way to add consistency across all of your task sequences.
Right, because you might be using this like 90% of the same PowerShell script in all of them, but you're changing like the top 5 parameters. Like so this way you can keep that same across all the boards and just make it easy to change without having to have somebody go in there each different task sequence and find that code and change it. So let's see here. Creating your own step definition. All right. So this is a new server. This is running 1.3. So it's a little bit different than what Mike was showing. This is actually our community version, just to show that it works in both. So it's a little bit different look, and this is running on a Windows 11 that I just set up yesterday. So it should be all working fine. So going into step definitions, we're just going to go ahead and just demo creating your own manually. So let's just say that you want to have like some basic checks before a task sequence gets started, right? So you want to say, so hardware check, type name, hardware, check your hardware. All right, so we'll click open after creation, save. So once you've got in here, this is kind of looking the same for most of the things in DeployR, where you create your shell, and then you go over here and you create your version. So we'll go ahead and create that. All right, so at this point, now we have an empty shell for our step definition. We'll go ahead and click add here. We're going to put memory requirements. So memory. Okay, so this will be a required field. That means that, and so is description. In amount of RAM needed. All right. So when you check required, then when somebody adds the step in, they're forced to make sure that there's something in there. Otherwise, it's going to not allow them to save until they've done some input. So at this point, we have all these different options to add into it. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and say number, and I'm going to say default value is 8. So here's a little checkbox for hidden. Sometimes we'll end up adding hidden, so that way when in the GUI you don't actually see this, and that's particularly useful like on your content item. When you have content like the scripts in the background that you need as part of the step option, but you don't want to have your end user see that in the background. But for this, we want to have your DeployR admins be able to see the steps. So we'll go ahead and hit add there. So now next, we will go ahead and we're just going to call it content required And here, this will actually be a content item, purpose other, select, and this is where you actually have created a content item. I did not, so I'm just going to pick anything just for this demo. And then we're going to hit hidden and save. So now this is where the content item would be where the script is in the background. We're going to add one more here. And this will be script, display name script name. This is the script that does the stuff. All right, required. And this will be text script. So you can either do this, and then we'll just put in the script name, which would be, we'll say minrex.ps1, and we'll hit hidden and save. So at this point, this step definition is a workable step definition, assuming that I have a content item, and in that content item, I have a script called minrex ps1. And so then in the background, how this would work would be quite a bit different. So let's pull that up here. So we're going to head over and look at some in the background, the scripts that you create. What are they actually doing? So let's. All right. So first thing in the scripts that I do is I import the DeployR module. And then once we get the module, we're going to pull in those different variables, right? So each one of these variables are going to be from the step definition here. So like memory rex would be like the minimum memory. So that's where it's going to, as your task sequence is running, it's going to create these variables and associate the values that you set. I think I got ahead of myself here. So let's go ahead and go back here so you can see what this looks like in the task sequence. We're going to create a new task sequence here. Just and bare metal. So we will edit. There, it wants us to do this. I don't have that. Just going to select anything, add step. All right. So now we have check. Did I call it hardware check? I call it. So we'll do that. So I remember what I called it. Hardware check. So back here. Am I not seeing that? Show more. There it is. Hardware check. And select. So at this point, you can see from the other side, we have just the one input field. So end user, so we defaulted it to 8, but they could go ahead and change the minimum requirements to 4. Or if you have like certain labs, you might want to have it at 16. And we'll save all. So during the task sequence, what's going to happen is it's going to see this, it's going to create a variable, and that variable will be set to 16. So then on the back end, the script is going to consume that variable because we're going to pull that into this variable. And then later on, then we'll have a check in PowerShell of where it's going to pull that through, and then do the check. It's going to grab your minimum memory. All right, so here we have where it's grabbing your memory, your host memory, and then it's going to do some math a little bit further down, and then go ahead and check it. So that's how you can pass variables back and forth between your step definition and your step definition and your script. And then in the script, you can say, like, if it doesn't meet that, just doing like an exit 1, and then you can have it do like a write error or write host of like where it failed. So out here in our 2-point GitHub, we have step definitions. We have several different samples, and we have a little README here that you can use to go ahead and import some things. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and download a bunch of these scripts. Download. And out of these, we're going to create a content item. All right, so then we've downloaded these scripts. Are they downloading? Keep. Okay. Now, Mike would always remind me, make sure I make that they are not blocked. Take a look at these as well here. All right, we're going to make a new folder for those, and we're going to call it custom step defs. We're going to move those into here. All right, so now let's go back to our DeployR. Let's go to content items, and we'll call it custom step definitions, scripts for our custom steps. Purpose will be other. Type will be folder. Open after creation. Save.
Just a quick note too on if you do any offline media, you want to put a tag on that content item so that you can include that tag when you go to create your standalone media, for example. Otherwise, it will get to that custom step and then fail because it doesn't have the necessary contents.
Right. Thanks, Mike. So now we've got our content item with the step definition PowerShell scripts that will run in the background. And then what we'll do is we'll import. So when you export your custom JSON or your custom step definitions, what happens is this is just in the back end basically represented by a JSON file. So if you look at it, it's got the name of your step, and it's got your description, and then it's got all the different drop downs and fields that you've added in. And so that's represented right there. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and download these files. So that was our check readiness. So we're going to go ahead now, connect into our DeployR server, we'll import our module, and then we'll connect to DeployR. The default passcode for community is DeployR. Now I've got my valid token. So then we're going to go import dash DeployR step definition source file, and that's going to be under my download folder. And I can safely say that is it. It starts with 7E. We're going to go ahead and click that. And so now you can see here the results, the readiness checker, this will check. So let's head back over to our step definitions, hit refresh. Okay, so then we've got units, so R. Or there we go. This checker. So the step definition I just pulled in already has all these different things configured. So it's got the script name, which is the check readiness, but you can see here that it does not see the content item. So what we'll end up doing here is going into edit on here, going into select, custom step definitions is the content we just created and just save. Okay, so then if you import and you download a script, just make sure it's in the step definition you want. And we did confirm that it was the check readiness script, check readiness. The rest of these things here are all the different available parameters basically that are being passed into that script. So the minimum memory, minimum free space, what client. So if you kick off a task sequence from an operating system, do you want to make sure whether it's a client OS or a server OS? If it's a server OS, you might want it to just cancel out because you don't want to accidentally reimage the server. Minimum operating system version, so you can tell it which OS version you want it to apply to. And these assume that you're starting from within the OS versus WinPE. Does it have TPM2? Does it meet the Windows minimum requirements? And do you want to add some additional debug logging? So when we go to our task sequences, let's go ahead and add that step that we just imported. We're going to go into the WinPE section here, and we're going to do readiness checker. Version 1, select. I like to throw that up at the front because there's no point in doing anything else if it doesn't meet the requirements. So by default, these are all filled out. So the minimum RAM, I like to up that to 8. Free space doesn't really matter unless you're coming in from the full OS. We'll leave it at 25. Client or server, we'll leave it client. Minimum OS build doesn't matter for us. TPM and doesn't meet requirements. So the Windows 11 requirements get a little bit more tricky because that's going to check your processor as well. And then throw that back. And then the script will write out all the different, if any of these fail, it's gonna do that in the log. It'll show exactly why it didn't meet these requirements. So if we go, now that you can see what this looks like here, if we go back and take a look at the readiness checker, it makes a little more sense where each one of those different parameters is associated with one of the values here. So it's going to come in at either as like these will be numbers, this will be a string value, and these will just be like true or falses. So then when you're going through your script that you're building, you can then create the logic behind the scenes that is going to pull these parameters. So this is one of those things where, yeah, I could just paste in a long PowerShell script, but it's nice to be able to have, because like I have different steps in my lab. I have the same step twice, but different conditions, one for physical devices and one for VMs. So I keep my VMs, I turn off my requirements for Windows 11 and I put my minimum RAM down to 4 on my VMs. Whereas my hardware, I have it checked for Windows 11 and I have my RAM set to 8. And if it does not do that, then it will go ahead and fail and show in the logs why it didn't reach those requirements. So that's kind of the reason why that you can see why I like to use custom step definitions so that you can easily push these parameters in for different reasons instead of having the same script basically pasted in twice that you've modified. You can make it a little bit more user friendly. Let's go ahead and import a couple other ones here. So let's go back. We're going to go ahead and import the Microsoft 365. Let's download this one. Let's go back here. And that one was 7.5. Import. All right. So that one is to install 365. So I wrote this because if you've ever been out to like the Microsoft 365 page, you get like so many different options that it can almost be overwhelming at times. So I thought I'd do the same thing to the DeployR users, giving them so many options that it can be overwhelming. All right, so let's go ahead, and now that I know that one's in here, we'll go ahead and fix it because it's going to need that content item one here. But you can see here there's all sorts of different options available. The Microsoft 365 one's unique because I need to have it actually go and pull down the Microsoft 365 installer. So there is an actual spot where they can go ahead and update the download path to the offline Office installer, the setup file. I've got one in there by default, which will be from whenever I built this, and they do release that, I don't know, every few months, so it's worth going and updating that item, which I'll show you here in a minute. But we need to go ahead and update this content item. All right, and we'll save. And then we'll go back to our task sequence. And then once we're in the full OS, we can go ahead and install Office. And you can see here there's that arrow because it wants you to complete a few of the different options first. So we've got the different the different suites available that you could pick first. So we're going to do the enterprise, and it will include the teams. At this point, you can pick Visio or project, add the access runtime. Which channel do you want? We're just going to leave current. Office, Outlook, new. So all the different options that you would see on the Office website, you can check boxes for. You can customize your company name. And here's where I was talking where the download URL. So this here's the Office deployment tool. So this is back probably 6 months ago already. So if you went out there and you found a newer URL, you could just update this. And then we'll go ahead and save changes. And so then during the task sequence, what will happen is it's going to run this step. It's going to go ahead, download the Office tool, apply all these different command lines to it, and run. So how that looks like in the script is, and this is why I really like step definitions, because this gets really confusing. Because so here's all the different parameters that we're passing in that we saw on that page: project, Visio, access, the runtime, and then all the different includes for the different options in Office, to whether to auto activate, pinning, all sorts of different variables there. And then down here, what I like to do when I create a PowerShell script for a step definition is do a lot of reporting, doing a lot of write hosts, just to make my life easier for troubleshooting when I get it wrong the first 5 times. And so I can start to find what did I do wrong. So I do a lot of write outs into the log. I also, I like logging, just makes life a little easier when people are like, well, what got installed? Can you prove it? It's like, well, yeah, I can. So I do a lot of write hosts showing exactly what the variables were. And then after I do that, it goes down and starts to do the different work. I also, on this one, because it's just such a complex thing, I have it right into a separate log as well. So for downloading in the task sequence, I'm actually using the built-in downloader function instead of using like start bits transfer or invoke web request. DeployR has its own downloading process that will go through the DeployR server. So I'm using the request DeployR custom content commandlet and then pointing it at the URL and having it download into, and that will actually do a lot of the logic of downloading it into the proper place during a task sequence. So I don't need to worry about that. But I do have a catch. If for some reason that's not working, then I fall back to invoke. And a lot of times what I'll end up doing is doing that. So like while I'm testing, I don't have to test it in a task sequence environment. And I'll show that up here too. So as you saw up here, if you're in the task sequence environment, it's pulling all these different variables. If you're not, then I'm just arbitrarily setting everything, and that allows me to test my scripts that I'm going to put into a task sequence, just like on my work, my local workstation. So I can go ahead and click run, and it's going to see, oh, you're not in a task sequence. Apply these variables and go ahead and run. And that is why then down here I have it be able to fall back, because it's not going to be able to run my tests if I don't have these commandlets available outside of a task sequence. So I try to write everything I do so it works in or outside of a task sequence for testing. Now this is where it gets really fun, is when you are at like the Office config site and you finally checked like the 18 boxes and drop downs, it gives you the like configuration.xml file. So what we're doing here in the step is doing the exact same thing. Is we're taking the XML and then we're going to manipulate it, right? So we have just a generic one at first, and then all those variables are going to come through and modify the XML file, depending like if you're using shared computer licensing. If you're going to use like project is none, not equal none, then it goes ahead and puts in the different things for project. These are the Microsoft SKU. I'm not giving out any license keys. This is just what they provide for the different keys that you need to install those different products. They would be activated through your own licensing, of course. But then we're modifying all the XML. So this gets to be really complex, and this is exactly why we talked about like making it more simple for your admins. I don't want any of the admins coming in here, and because for this organization they don't need they want like Outlook Classic, I don't want them having to go through and modify XML. The odds of having a typo are incredibly high, which is why I really like that option of I can do all this work on the back end, and it's just a checkbox for the DeployR admins. So this one here is probably one of the more extreme examples of creating a step definition to simplify things. So then at the end here, it's going to go ahead and start that process of the setup, and it's going to pass all those arguments in, and it's going to use that XML file that we just generated from up above. So here we're actually creating that XML based upon how we manipulated it, and it's logging everything. And then at the very end, once it's done, we go ahead and stop that process once it's been completed, and we move on to the next step. So after this step's been added into your task sequence, it'll go ahead and pull all the bits from the internet. Now, if you want to, you could take this functionality and just tweak it slightly. If you wanted to have it pull from your own content, you could add another content item where you have all your sources. And then at that point, like you would update this line here to point at your source files instead of having it pull from the internet. So a lot of work has been done for you. We've got lots of different examples here. So let's go back to step definitions. We also have the background image. So if you want to set a background image, this is one that you can download and import. So let's go ahead and do that. So that's 7E4. 7E4. So it's really easy to, as you can see here, to import and share your different definitions. So while we're at it here, then let's export -DeployR step definition -ID. So the ID here is that number, right? So to find that, if you want to do an export, let's go into our step definitions. And now let's say you created something you thought was cool and you wanted to share with the world. So we're going to go in here. The ID is the squid right up here in your browser. We're going to grab that. And destination folder, we're going to go throw that in my downloads. And is there anything else? Remote, sure, let's do that. All right, so it went ahead and connected, grab that step definition in my downloads and CA, and there it is. So if we open that notepad, you can see here it's the hardware check. So this is all the different logic and brains that are inside of that step definition that got exported. And this is a more simple one. You can tell like the M365 one would get quite long. All right. So exporting is pretty simple and importing is quite simple as well. You can do like mass imports where if you just do like a get and then like pipe it to import, it will import a whole pile of things. And I can show you some more of that here in a moment. So we're going to go ahead and we did just import that one. So let's go back into our step definitions and theme settings is what I named it. And we're going to fix our content item. It's nice that it's there at the top. I'll hit save. Okay, let's go ahead and see what that looks like inside of a task sequence now. Edit. In the full OS is when we're going to want to do that. And I'm going to just type in theme. Okay. Configure. Show more. Oh, that's interesting. How about if I refresh? Because this was a different tab that was already open. So that's the beauty of the browser is you can have multiple tabs, but then you forget sometimes that you need to refresh when you've done things in other tabs. There. I'm not crazy. It's there. Okay. All right. So at this point, you'd have another content item with your file. So we're going to fix this step definition. And enable dark mode. And what kind of wallpaper style do you want? Do you want it to fill, fit, center, or stretch? We'll just leave it in the fill option there. And then we'll just click save. Oh, I did this wrong. Why would I do that? Okay, so I wasn't reading my own thing. So this is the content item with your images, right? So that wouldn't make sense to have that there. Step CI, background image. Well, this step is something that I'm going to have to fix later because it does not have the step for where you pull that content item in. Because we need to have the content for the script, but we also need one there for your background images. But I will fix that later and upload a new copy. All right, so you've kind of gone through and you've seen how to do the importing and exporting. I've gone and I have written a blog post on my own site not too long ago for a bunch of stuff that I wrote for importing custom step definitions. So there's a bunch of things here. Here's a sample. So I wrote a bunch for like HP, for Dell, Lenovo, and then I wrote a little PowerShell script that you can run and it will list all the ones that I've written. And then you can just pick and choose which ones you want and it will go ahead and import them. And it will even grab that content item and import that as well. So when you're done, it will have the content item already associated with it. So typically when I build a brand new lab, I go out here and I grab the script, DeployR import from GitHub, and I run that and that pops up that dialog box, and then I run that right away. So it imports all the stuff I built in my other labs. When you do this, make sure that you're running it in PowerShell 7, and make sure that I really like VS Code for this versus ISE, because ISE will mess up some of these things, especially since it's not running PowerShell 7. So typically on my DeployR server, I have the PowerShell 7, which was a requirement, so it's already there, and then I install VS Code and Git so that I can connect back to my GitHub resources and pull those in. So this blog post is out there for you. Go ahead and check that out to learn more about importing stuff from the community. And with that, I think I've covered what I wanted to cover, and that gives us a little time for Q&A.
You want to switch back to the slides real quick? I think we got a couple of slides before Q&A.
Yeah, I can do that. Creating your own. Well, that didn't go well. There we go. A bunch of the resources. We've got documentation out on our doc site, and I'm updating that almost daily. Every time I learn something new, I typically go out there and update. So I just added a page of documentation around 11 o'clock last night about filtering. And we have a knowledge base. The YouTube channel is awesome. Mike is, he's missed his calling for creating video content. He'd be the next TikTok guy here if you ever wanted to change careers. We have Reddit, which is getting more and more use, which is awesome. And we also have the WinAdmins Discord for help. So all great places to connect with people and talk about these things and just get answers to your questions.
All of our webinars do get posted to YouTube, and I think we just posted the one that Andreas and Mateus gave on delivery optimization. Awesome. So that's definitely worth checking out if you missed that one.
All right, with that, thanks guys. I've taken everybody off of mute. You can unmute yourself. Yeah, I see that. When you raise your hand, just unmute yourself there and go ahead and ask your question.
Good to see you too, Daniel.
Don't be shy. Be a hero and ask the question that everybody else is wanting to ask but too afraid to ask. I think the highlight to me was Gary pointing out, like, I do this work in the back. The little work it saves me now. Now it's going to say the work I do now is going to save us later in troubleshooting. It's like why we do this. And when he opened up and showed the script, there's just 80 million places for a little typo in there to go wrong. And this is a real lifesaver to be able to use drop downs like that.
Maybe Brian, I could just add that like this was the last in the current DeployR webinar series, and we'll have a new series of webinars in the fall autumn period. But if especially now that everybody's on the call, if there's anybody that has a session they think could be interesting or another topic we should cover both in DeployR but also some of the other products, and we'd be interested in hearing that.
Hey Gary, you did a custom one for selective pre-caching, right? I was looking for it there. I couldn't find it.
That's not a step definition though. That's just a PowerShell script that pops up like a front end to just pick and choose once you're running the task sequence. So out in our GitHub, I did add this template. Basically, for creating your own step definitions, the PowerShell script behind it, where it can, will first try connecting into your task sequence. And then like what I like to do is where you're connecting, if you're connected to task sequence, it's going to grab those variables. If it's not, it's going to just pre-create some. It does a check for WinPE. It's got the part where it reports out to the log. And then it goes ahead and does a few examples here. Thank you for the copy. So then I put this out here so you can start manipulating things, and just kind of an example of how I like to work mine. And then there is a README as well that you can go through and take a look at for simple, and then points you back at the docs. So I did that a couple nights ago as well.
Yeah, Michael did mention in the chat, for those of you not in the chat, that we do have a What's New in DeployR 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 webinar coming up later this month. So keep an eye out for that one.
Alex, you have a question?
Yeah, with the custom step definitions, which I've taken great use of, is there a way, or will there be a way in the future? Because if I link them to like half a dozen task sequences, and then I realize, oh crap, I forgot that one setting, they're stale where they're linked to the task sequence. They don't reread from the original step definition. Whilst I suspect that functionality is wanted as well, is there a way to have them linked to the live step definition, so that if I update the one step definition, it'll update the task sequences it's in? What I've been doing in the meantime is using linked tasks sequences, so that I can edit the task sequence and link that to the main task sequence, and then it always stays live, even if I link it to half a dozen places.
I think that's a great question, and something that we discussed a lot also as we're looking into importing, exporting other people's work through the later functions of basically having a community of elements. Like, how do you deal with if somebody's changed? So the backend has a lot of already supports for this. We just haven't gotten the UI to update it. But there will probably be an element of, if you're changing your definition, it will say, okay, this is being used in these 14 sub steps or whatever. Which ones do you want to update? Do you want to update all of them, etc.? And we'll probably try to copy over the whole like pre-prod, prod logic as well, so that you don't accidentally break something by doing something in your lab, right?
Wow, that's even more advanced than I was thinking of, but that sounds awesome. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another small thing that I noticed a while ago, which would be great to have, there is no like copy or duplicate function in there. So if I, for example, have a task sequence and I essentially just add a few steps for it. In our case, for example, we are managing our devices using ZenWorks, and there the most of the software deployment is done on the side of ZenWorks later on, since we have all the software bundles created there anyway. But for different areas, for example, we have a different set of software. So the entire image is basically the same, except for like 2 or 3 steps. So this would be very great to have. Right now I'm basically rebuilding the entire thing and then changing the small thing.
Yeah, I can't remember if we're shipping. Are we shipping copy in 1.3?
It's there earlier. If you use PowerShell, you can do the dash clone.
Yeah, but I think he wants it in the UI that we talked. I think we're shipping it as 1.3. If it's not in 1.3, it will be in 1.4.
Yeah, it's definitely
doing it using PowerShell would be
do a clone.
Doing it in PowerShell would honestly be enough in most cases, since we don't do this like every day. We do this like every few months maybe. So that's interesting, to be honest. But thanks. That sounds very good.
Good. But we didn't ship that in 1.3, or we haven't shipped 1.3 yet. But
Michael said yes. He
Oh, he did say yes?
commented. Yes,
Yeah,
he
I did,
did.
yeah.
So just to confirm everybody, it's in 1.3.
I think it's actually in 1.2 as well, but not everyone has access to that yet. But we'll get all that fixed up with 1.3 and the new DeployR.
Oh, yeah, clone. Look at that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because you said at the beginning you were on 1.3.
Yep. Early adopter.
Click it,
I
see
like
if
the
it
pain.
works.
Ooh, okay, let me find one that autopilot clone.
If
Are
you
you
need
sure?
something before that releases, Johan released a little PowerShell script on his GitHub. See, pops up a cloning.
Yep, there
Makes
it is.
easy for you.
Copy
Yeah.
of autopilot from June. So yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I like the PowerShell.
Yeah, I just dropped
But
it in
this
the
is
chat.
really nice. I hadn't seen this yet. Nice work. And now clean it up. Are you sure? Yeah, we got a few more minutes if there's any last questions. Yeah, so task sequences.
Yes, can we just communicate the date for the 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 webinar that's coming up so that everybody knows about it? Obviously, we'll send communication out as well, but can we say the date and the time here?
Now you're asking a lot.
Thursday the 25th
Yes, it's the
at
25th.
8 a.m. Pacific. So noon UTC.
Mhm.
Is that right? No, I didn't
Perfect.
do that
No.
math right. I
No,
did that
1
math
o'clock.
backwards. Yep. So 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. UTC.
Yeah, so here's in one of my task sequences, a lot of the custom ones that I've created where you can set a default start menu layout, default lock screen, the default background, and I enable dark mode. I create default user account pictures. I like my BC Bob guy. So in every different lab, I have a different default. So I know like at the login screen, if it's Pure Cache Pete, I know it's my CM lab. If it's Branch Cache Bob, I know it's my DeployR lab. And then different user defaults. So like I like to make sure all the extensions are enabled by default, show hidden folders, and then hide different things. So these are all step definitions that I have out in my GitHub, which if you look at my blog, you can easily steal as well. Configure network. So I like to enable RDP and ping on all of my devices. This is just a script. And then like I like to remove task view, remove copilot, remove widgets, chat. I like to move it to the left because then my main computer at work is centered. And that way, if it's on the left, I know it's one of my lab machines. So the start menu is in a different place. And I can easily just think that's one more thing to remind me that it's a different computer that I'm working on. Yep. So there's lots of different step definitions. And this is why another reason I like to just do this because I can toggle things on and off really quick without having to go into the PowerShell. I've got like one for running HP Image Assistant, so I can have it just do the drivers or a bunch of different things. Same for Dell Command Update, and one for configuring Dell Command Update with all the different settings for Dell Command Update, which is a lot. This one took a long time to write. This one I wrote pre-Claude, so this one's actually like, I feel more pride in stuff I wrote pre-Claude because I had to work harder for it. Yeah, so that I got different ones for the different OEMs that you can import. Yeah, the
And everybody
HP and
can
Dell
get
ones.
these, Gary?
Yep.
Everybody can grab these?
Go out to the showed. If you just go to Garytown, it's one of the more recent ones, and that will give you a link to my GitHub. But so I have a GWB 2 labs. I can type labs GitHub, and a lot of the stuff I do here, once it's been tested, I go ahead and add it into the actual 2.1. But for stuff that I never want to support at work, I just leave here. Good to hear you, Kelly. DeployR, and let's see. So I've got, yeah, so many things. Test sequence scripts, step definitions. So here are all the PowerShell scripts behind the scenes. And then the custom steps are here. So it will tell you what it's named and then the code. So let's see here. I've got the Dell ones here, HP and Lenovo. And the blog post will show how to import them. There's that one script that you can run. It will, anything I have in GitHub, it will pull in and then give you the option of importing. So.
All right, looks like Alex has one more question.
Hey, sorry, this one's specifically for Gary. I wasted a lot of time with the Lenovo system update trying to get that thing to run silently. I don't suppose you had any luck, did you? Because I can see you've managed it with the Dell one, which we did here as well. But Lenovo just basically, it seemed to tell me to start off.
Are you talking about the Vantage tool itself or using their PowerShell one?
I didn't know about their PowerShell one, so I guess I need to look at that. But no, I tried both the Vantage and the Lenovo system update, and neither of them played well silently for me. I had to use the GUI.
Yeah, I'd agree. But recently, I need to update the one I wrote because I was using the community version. But within the last few months, Lenovo actually came out with their own PowerShell updater module. So I do plan to.
I've missed that. Thank you. I'll go and look that up later.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, there's a few people you should probably be following if you want to keep on top of Lenovo stuff. And was that Thad that posted it? But like, so there's Joe, Thad, and I'm missing one of the other guys' names. But on LinkedIn, they post pretty much any time that they put out a new tool like that. So that's how I found out.
Phil,
thank you.
Phil's the other one.
Phil. And I think it's actually Phil that posted it. He's the one that does a lot of the posting on LinkedIn.
All right, that brings us a little bit past our finish time. I suppose it's time to wrap this up, and thank you guys for a very informative session. It's good stuff. It can prevent you from wasting hours on troubleshooting, and it just makes everything look really slick if you take the time to take these steps and do this. I'm glad it's been recorded so you can rewatch it if you get stuck, and you always know how to reach everybody here. These guys are very well known in the community, and you'll find them out on that in those forums that were in the slide deck. So with that, we're going to wrap this up, and thank you for coming today. Thanks, guys.